something going on. Freedom is in danger. Agents of the state, they're taking children from the manger. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did.
Hello, folks.
They needed someone, oh, Jody wouldn't flip. They looked around, saw him quick. Oh, it made so much sense why. Oh, Brendan Dassey, he was Stephen's alibi. There's something going on in Wisconsin that's not kosher. We better stop, let's all take a look closer. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid for Brendan Dassey. That's exactly what they did. They visit him once, they visit him twice. They make him feel so safe. Sandwiches, soda, so nice. No cameras rolling and under no lights. Who knows what went on up in Fox Hill Monday night? There's something
Fox
going
Hills, right, Tracy?
on. Freedom is in danger. Everything about this kid getting stranger and stranger.
Stranger and stranger.
All we know, they will sacrifice your kid. Oh, Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. March 1st, alone in a room with Bert and Ernie. No parent present and no attorney. 4 hours later, with a touch of the knee, they finally get Brendan to agree. There's something going on. I said there's something going on. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. There's something going on. I said freedom is in danger when the agents of the state can take the children from the manger. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. Take Brendan Dassey, oh, that's exactly what they did.
Alrighty, hello, everybody. How you doing there today? As you may know from the title, we are here today speaking with Tracy Keogh, and I'll tell you what, I'm pretty excited about it because some of you who may not know Tracy, she is a very, very staunch supporter of Brendan and Stephen, but very, very staunch supporter, very, very knowledgeable about the case, does a lot of work that I think a lot of people could easily gain, get the benefit of by just following her on Twitter. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So she's here tonight. I want to introduce her. Hi, Tracy. How are you?
How you doing, Rich? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Like I said, guys, Tracy's one of the really great supporters of Stephen and Brendan. And we're going to just chat about some things tonight, a few aspects about Stephen and Brendan, the investigators a little bit, and then I think maybe in a little while, Allie, if you're out there, I'd like to ask you to come on the panel. Scooby, if you think you might be willing to come on the panel a little while, maybe in about 45 minutes after Tracy and I are done chatting a bit. And then maybe we can have a little panel discussion for maybe another hour or so if you guys want. So that's kind of what we're planning to do tonight. So those of you who don't know, Tracy obviously runs Brendan's official Facebook page. Well, she's one of the moderators for it, runs it along with Barb, his mom. And she also has a webpage, right, for Brendan?
Yep, freedomforbrendandassey.com.
freedomforbrendandassey.com. You can find all the, court paperwork or court filings, anything that happened in court with Brendan, all that sort of stuff is there. Articles about Brendan, a lot of things that Tracy authors herself even, correct?
Correct.
And a very interesting website to check out. Trust me, it's worth the look. So, and like I said, this is a lot of the work that Miss Keogh here does behind the scenes. And she does it just because she wants that information to get out there. She like me, wants people to know this is what was happening. Don't let the
Yeah.
agents of the state of Wisconsin try to fool you and act like this wasn't happening. This is what was happening.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
we're here. We're the whistleblowers, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to tag on to that as well, that I have a page called the Brendan Dassey Project, which is I run independently as well. So it sort of puts a bit more information out there that perhaps sits in closed groups, and I try and bring it out into a public forum.
Awesome. If Ziggy Pom Pom, if you guys could find those links, there you go. They're finding them now. Great. Awesome. I'm sorry. One thing here. Pom Pom, are you having trouble posting links? Anyway, we'll get those links out to you guys at some point here. So, anyways.
Yeah. And just throwing it out there, there's an Instagram as well, but I'll stop. It's not about me.
Hey, look, a lot of people like Instagram. I'm not one of them, but there's a lot of people that do. So, I mean, whichever platform tickles your fancy, as I say. I was actually on live last night, and people were asking me about other YouTubers, and I was basically saying, "Hey, look, wherever the platform you go, whatever flavor suits you, to go there and get aware about the case and get knowledge about get factual information about the case. That thing. So find your flavor and
absolutely
whatever. I'm not going to hate anybody here.
Yeah. I think with my background in digital space, so to speak, I tried, when I first became involved, I had a look at the landscape and tried to come up with something for almost every platform, for most channels that would channel information about Brendan's case to people who perhaps don't go looking on Instagram, for that sort of stuff. So that's one of the reasons behind Instagram. But it's like Wikipedia. I've done some Wikipedia pages and stuff like that. Anything that I can think of, I will give it a go. I will give it a go.
Right, absolutely. And that's like I said, folks, this is one of the reasons why it's good to follow Tracy. She's always doing something. She's always working for these cases. She's always, basically doing something behind the scenes. How many computers have you broken because you were staying up late working?
I actually went through 3 laptops last year.
Yeah.
They all met horrible ends. So this one's not doing too bad. We've got about 6 months out of it so far.
There you go.
Yeah.
You were cracking me up with that stuff last year when you were accidentally breaking your computer.
I make no apologies for the fact that I'm just a calamity that plays around with the alphabet an awful lot. That's kind of sums me up, I think.
Yeah. That's funny. Oh, alrighty. So that's a little bit about Tracy, folks. So now that I've got Tracy here, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things about the case that I don't know, some interesting bullet points I've come up with, and we're just going to kind of chat about the bullet points. So first thing, it's basically a question here. The first thing we're going to talk about is I want to know what Tracy's top 2 reasons are for why she believes Brendan to be innocent. And then I'm going to go ahead and give my top 2.
Okay. I could give you so many more than 2.
We'll save that for after our top
2. You don't know what you've done asking me to come on here. No. For me, even the sound of Brendan's voice, even before I saw the pictures of the interrogation, I was in another room and I could hear his voice. And it struck me as such a vulnerable voice. I then went in to have a look. The fact that he asked to go back to class, for me, showed that this was a young guy who had no comprehension whatsoever of the seriousness of what he was involved in. Because if you were truly guilty of something, the last thing you would be doing is wanting to get your project in, is wanting to get back to class. And we see through the interrogations on the 27th that Brendan's main concern was going back to class. That's not somebody who's running and hiding from having done something. And I think if I fast forward 3 years of being involved, Brendan himself is absolutely incapable of something like this. You know, we've all done our digging, and one of the things that's always struck me is that, and it's in the case files, that Brendan faints at the sight of blood.
Oh yeah.
So please tell me how a young guy who's more concerned with going back to class, handing in his assignments, faints at the sight of blood, is capable of such a heinous crime. For me, you know, those two elements, and having knowledge of Brendan as a person through letters and things like that, it's a farce. To me, it's a farce. It's a tragic farce.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened to Brendan is just, it
Yeah.
needs to become these, like Wicklander Zawalski is talking about. It needs to become the example of what not to do. It needs to become the line in the sand drawn for law enforcement and detectives to say, look, this far, no farther. You go farther than this, you're in dangerous territory. You know what I mean? And so hopefully that's what it's going to do. But yeah, so there was maybe a little more than two, but all brilliant reasons. So I'm going to go with my number one is obviously going to have to be, because I talk about it so much and I never shut the hell up about it. And that's going to have to be the control question. Right? Yeah. Because to me, this proves the duplicitous nature of Fassbender really to a T.
Yeah.
He's claiming this statement, or this answers to this question, this control question that he offered Brendan, proved Brendan's guilty and proved that he wasn't just telling them what they wanted to hear, when it actually proves exactly that. It proves exactly what he's saying it doesn't prove. So I got to talk about it, of course, because he's offering it as proof that Brendan's confession is genuine. I'm offering it as proof that Brendan was flip-flopping and basically scared of the detectives and didn't want to be in disagreement with them and immediately changed his answer in the hopes of pleasing the investigator. I think it proves exactly the opposite. So that's why I think it points out the disingenuous nature of Tom Fassbender, and y'all know how much I love that word. And so, I mean, it just points that out. And Wiegert, I don't know. Wiegert, don't even get me started, dude. Why he was touching Brendan, why he was, you know, all these things. I mean, just so many things about what happened here. Now, I mean, it's just kind of disturbing, but we'll get into that in a minute when we talk about Fassbender and Wiegert and whether or not it was overzealous or, you know, whether it was intentional. So we'll get to that in a second. Number two is going to have to be the fact that there is no hint of any of the things that Brendan said happened in the trailer and garage. There's no hint of them. Zero. Nothing to back them up in any way, shape, or form. The only things they offered by Judge Hamilton, you know, when he said that they stabbed her and they shot her and they raped her and whatever, he offered those things all on his own, right? And Luke Berg's like, yes. And it's like, Judge Hamilton, you can't prove any of those things happened. He just said them, but you can't prove any of them happened. And it's like, and that's the problems that we run into with Brendan. So
I agree with you 100%. I mean, there's no DNA evidence. There's, as one of our mutual favorite, Robert Milan, has said, you know, that evidence means nothing unless there's corroboration. And, you know, you just have to look at images of things like the bed heads. I don't know what you guys call them in America, but like, you know, the knobs on the top of the bed, they are shining. They are shining. They have not been subjected to somebody's, you know, trying to thrashing and whatever. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, and I absolutely agree with you. And I think if we take it to the Seventh Circuit and we take it to Judge Hamilton, you know, in their decision in the en banc and in his dissent, he talks about that control question being an example of Brendan resisting. And for me, you know, obviously the transcriber Brendan says what, he doesn't say where. So it's misrepresented through his whole trial. It's misrepresented through the courts, and nobody took the effort to look into that. So Brendan clearly says what, and throughout all the documentation it says where.
Right.
And to every time they spoke about Brendan resisting, I was like, is it me? Is it me that just doesn't feel that there's nothing about Brendan resisting? This is about a young guy who doesn't get it. It's about a young guy who is guessing his way through something. There was no resisting. I don't think Brendan, when you watch those tapes, resisted on any level. He was just trying to placate the investigators.
Yeah.
You know, it's
I think
the whole
only thing that could
resistance.
be construed as resistance would have been his wrong guesses until he got to the right one, right?
Absolutely. Until he pleased them, until he gave them the narrative that they were trying to extract from him.
Right.
You know, and then when you have learned judges coming along and totally misinterpreting what millions of people, what legal academics, what professors of law and psychologists can plainly see, and you have judges at an appeal level not being able to see the same thing, that's quite frightening from a judicial perspective, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's if one of the reasons the Supreme Court of the US takes a case is when there's a split in the circuits.
Right.
You had a 4-3 at the en banc. If that's not a definitive split in a circuit, then
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know,
And
it's
if you add in Judge Duffin's opinion, you got an absolute split. You've got
you've
8
got a
federal
4-4.
judges that have looked at
Yeah.
it, and they are split
Yeah.
down the middle.
Mm.
So I agree with you on that, but obviously they
Yeah.
don't see it that way. So
Yeah.
I actually do have another thing. Since we're talking, I'm going to go beyond 2 things and say a third thing.
You're
The
sneaky
obvious, like clearly obvious fact that Brendan did not understand his Miranda rights. And what illustrates this? At the end, when he says, okay, so am I going to make it back for 6th period? Clearly thinks he's going back to school. Then when he's told he's going to be under arrest, he asks, is it only for 1 day?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a clear illustration, folks, that Brendan did not understand his Miranda rights.
Yeah.
That he just didn't.
Not a chance that he understood them. And for me, when you read the transcripts from both of the interviews on the 27th before they get to Two Rivers and what have you, you know, Brendan struggles with very simple words, and I think most adults with 2 neurons would be able to put together that this is a young guy that has some, you know, learning limitations, shall we say. Where was their duty of care to this 16-year-old? It would have been very obvious to them. They should have stopped. They should have at least brought Barb there. Barb was not present for the first statement. The first statement was taken on the 27th in Mishcot High School.
Right.
Brendan asked to go back to class. They allowed Brendan to go back to class. They then call Barb and invite Barb up to the school. But it's not until after that first statement. And that first statement comes off of the back of two coaching sessions at Crivets on the 6th and the 10th. You know, for me, this young man was groomed, and his vulnerabilities were absolutely exploited. And as I said previously, I agree with Kathleen Zauner that Brendan was weaponized, and his vulnerabilities, his suggestibility was all weaponized.
And I personally believe that the promise that was made to him by O'Neill on November 6th, I personally believe that promise stuck with him throughout all of this. I personally am not willing to write that off like the courts are.
I do agree.
Yeah.
Because what do the courts do? What have they done? And which a lot of people do in this space, and I see it on Twitter, I see it on Facebook, is that people come at this situation from their own space. They don't put themselves in place of perhaps a mother who had no idea of what was happening to her son. They don't put themselves in the place of a young, suggestible 16-year-old with limitations who doesn't know how to navigate what's unfolding in front of him. Right? It's easy to say, well, I wouldn't have done that. you know, or you know, we have someone like Stephen who was a bit more savvy. He'd been subjected to 18 years of the legal system, and you know, the meanderings of the police and what have you. So he was a bit more savvy. But you have a 16-year-old that didn't have any interaction with police whatsoever.
Right.
You know, for me, the tragedy sometimes is really overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, and the fact that judges on the, you know, that it had to get to the appellate level, that you didn't have a judge at the trial court suppress that obviously coerced confession, that was devoid of any corroborating evidence. How it got passed. I'm just putting this out there, but one of the things that interests me is that you know, Johnny Reid is responsible for both the polygraph and the Reid technique. We know that the polygraph is inadmissible in court, yet they do them, but it's inadmissible.
Right.
The polygraph and the Reid technique are both based off of behavioural interpretations, both absolutely open to variables, whether, you know, physiological reactions and stuff like that. So you have the polygraph inadmissible, but you have many a false confession at the hands of the Reid technique, rarely suppressed.
Right.
You know, and they're both based on the same ideologies. That to me is another one of those I don't get it moments, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see. Ali says, what does inconsistent mean? Another good point. I mean, Brendan not even knowing what inconsistent means. That's why I've been saying lately that with the state's comments regarding these bones in their response to Zellner's motion and basically everything, and I've been saying the state does know what inconsistent means, and you know what I mean, and their statements are very inconsistent now. I like the way Zellner phrased it. She said, Fallon and Gahn in the state reawakened the Halbach family grief in 2011. Their argument is that they reawakened the Halbach family grief to give them animal bones. And it's like, so are we supposed to say that makes it better somehow? I mean, it's like, it's just pointing out that what they've done is created a huge mess. And it shows that they've been being dishonest all along. And it just shows everything that they're doing is questionable, and everything about them is questionable, because it's still continuing to happen. I mean, how long were they hiding these ledgers? How long were they hiding these final pages of the Queso report, not handing it over to Stephen's attorneys at the time? And this, so it's like all of this stuff, all this, you know, clear, you know, obstruction on behalf of the state. It's like, I'm sorry, this can't just be an accident anymore. You know, it's just
it's okay if they've got a couple of typos. You go, okay, yeah, sure, that can happen. You know, but this is so far forward from a couple of typos. There are so many inconsistencies that the question of whether or not there are deliberate wrongdoing, I think, is pretty obvious. You know, we can come back to whether or not Brendan and Stephen are innocent, and I'm on the record, I absolutely believe they are. But when we put up the reasonable doubt and that presumption of innocence, how juries didn't come to find reasonable doubt is beyond me. Of course, hindsight's a great thing. We've learned so much. We've been extremely lucky. I've spoken to people who, you know, were involved in 2005 and 2006. They did not know what was unfolding. They were not aware. They were in the eye of a storm, so to speak.
I think most of the law enforcement and stuff didn't realize they were just backing their band of brothers, like kind of out of like a knee-jerk reaction, not necessarily a conscious one.
I think that the elements of play of malfeasance and people just doing their job. You know, I think there's a combination of both of those happening throughout, you know, particularly Stevens. I think with Brendan, what we have is once we had Stevens' trial, that Brendan Brendan didn't stand a chance. He didn't stand a chance from Mishicot, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. There's too much to doubt to maintain a level of saying, well, there's a few mistakes made, but it doesn't necessarily equate to a framing, or it doesn't necessarily equate to people planting. No, it may not equate to that, but it equates to something.
And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that key is just fishy as hell. Unless it popped out of freaking Narnia, where the hell did it come from? So I mean, So I mean, but look, there's justifiable questions about this evidence, and that's going to lead us into the next bit here. There are justifiable questions about this evidence. Why? Okay, when it comes to the bones, why are there only 40%? Why are some of them over in Manitowoc County gravel pit? Why with the bones, right? Then we have, where's the evidence of a rape, murder, bloody stabbings, and any hint of that anywhere here where you guys say it happened? No. So when it goes on and on. So these investigators going into March or at the end of February, when they're browbeating the hell out of Jody, trying to get Jody to say incriminating things about Stephen that they can hopefully use against him. And she eventually tells them, nope, get away, go out of here, go away. I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. Tells the jail, don't let them in anymore. I don't want to speak to them. Basically tells Fassbender and Uyghur to go kick rocks. What happens then? Within like 2 days, they have set their sights on the Dassey boys, and they are honing in on Brendan. Yes. So it's like you can see the clear, craven act of desperation as it unfolds. And it's like, this is just another one of the things in this case. So it leads me to this question. And maybe you guys can answer in the chat. Basically in this case, do you guys believe that Uyghur and Fassbender were just acting overzealous? Put an O for overzealous. Or do you believe that they were knowingly doing wrong? Put a K for knowingly doing wrong. See, I think this is a huge issue, and I think for a lot of people, it's a big issue. We don't want to believe that our public officials, like our police officers, these people that we want to trust, our DAs, and those people that we want to be able to inherently trust, we don't want to believe they're doing wrong. We want to believe they just made mistakes. So the question is, what do we believe happened here? Was it O, they were just overzealous and overstepped? Or is it K, they knowingly kind of stepped beyond and did what they did to a 16-year-old kid with clear limitations, who thought he was going back to school afterwards? So got a lot of Ks. Yep, looks like the Ks have it.
Yeah. So I wouldn't dispute the Ks. I think if we're being politically correct, as these cases are still active and ongoing, it's too far to suggest that Uyghur and Fassbender had no agenda. I think that we are more intelligent than to believe that. When you see the way they conducted Mishicot and then went to Two Rivers, I can talk about Fox Hills. There are reports that, and this from me, gives me a big fat K. Fassbender, it's in the case files, at 10 to 12 at night, rushes to Fox Hills Resort to interrogate Brendan over bleached jeans. Right. There is a statement entered into evidence of that particular interrogation. There's no doubt that the three parties that were at Fox Hills were detained. They were not free to go. But yet we have legal representatives and people who may have been there all saying that no interrogation took place.
Wow.
So for me, it's like, what was Fassbender doing? And then you look at, they build this
trying to keep the family from getting any wind of what they were doing before they did it.
Absolutely. even at the fire station where they took them before Fox Hills, they separated them, and on the during the court. During the trial, I think it's Wiegert who says that we wanted to protect Brendan from people at the Avery Salvage Yard. At that point, no one at the Avery Salvage Yard was aware that these interrogations had taken place. They would have no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place. And then to have some, detained for a mere 24 hours, that threat had dissipated from, overnight, that the next morning they were able to go back to school and go to work.
Right.
No, that's a K. That's a fat K. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, there's so much. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time in Stephen's trial transcripts and the evidence, and it's amazing what people are doing.
Yeah.
But I would encourage some of those super sleuths to get stuck into Brendan's. I'm by no means a super sleuth, and over a couple of weekends I found some stuff in there that I'm just like, seriously, like nobody's brought this up, or like the one, for example, where Brendan references himself in a comment as Dassey's garage. He's talking about himself in a third party. And for me, it's like, does that not show that this young man was coached verbatim on what he should be saying? Because he doesn't do that throughout it. So if you have somebody who consistently does that, then you go, okay, what does that mean? Is this the way that individual communicates? But it's just in this one answer, I think it's to Uyghur, that he talks about, and then we went to Dassey's garage. It's his own garage. It's his mother's garage. That for me is like, it's right up there with the control question for me in terms of showing Brendan being coached.
Malleable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Anything else on that, or?
No, I know I got some tangents. It's because I just can't help.
Oh, no worries.
I can't help myself.
People like it when we riff a little, so.
Yeah. It's like scatting at a jazz gig, but yeah, no, there's just, I'd absolutely encourage people, if they have the chance, to look through Brendan's the actual transcripts. Because things can be lost when we listen and watch, because they are such emotive interrogations that you get caught up in, your gut's got a hole in it, and you don't necessarily take everything in. But when you read the transcripts, when you read what comes out of Brendan's mouth, this is a young man that asks how to spell rack, garage, detective, and they don't stop that interrogation.
No, the worst part is that at one point when they're trying to call him on the fact that he's giving them imprecise information and whatever, and so he just goes, well, I'm guessing. And they just like ignore it. They move right on. Like, no, okay, he didn't say that. He didn't just say that. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's like, how much more obvious can it get, dude? The guy, it's just like, but
talking of that, another part that really gets to me is when they're going through the who shot her in the head sequence, right? That Brendan comes out with, obviously clutching at straws. And funny enough, I watched Kiss the Girls last night. My daughter came in and she was like, what are you doing, Mum? This is just going too far. And I was like, no, I have to see. And one of the characters absolutely says he cut her hair, right? So anyway, I just had to throw that in. But when Brendan is talking and guessing and they're leading him through that particular section, he says he cuts her throat, right? Which is such a heinous thing for anyone to do. They don't even bat an eyelid. The tone of their voice, the tone of their questioning does not change, because that's not what they want from him. So they keep taking him through until they're so exasperated that they come out, well, who shot her in the head? They bypass fact that this young guy has just incriminated himself, saying that he slit somebody's throat, but they didn't care about it. So when you watch that particular piece and you listen to the tone of the Uyghur and Fassbender, you know, he may as well have said, you know, I got roller skates for Christmas. They didn't care. That's not, it's not what they wanted from him
what
at
they
that
wanted
point.
to hear, right?
Yeah. But that really strikes me because it's so horrific. You know, that at that point that they've coerced this out of Brendan, that he slit somebody's throat, but yet to them it's not enough. It's not enough, you know, because it's not their narrative. It's not what they're looking for.
Right.
But, yeah.
Absolutely. That's weird. Why did it do that? Well, thank you for the compliment, Elegant Crime Junkie. Sorry, I was trying to say it in chat. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is I'm going to ask Tracy, what are her two top reasons for Stephen's innocence and or deserving a retrial?
Okay, I think with Stephen, you can't go past the evidence. And while for people who believe that he's guilty, the evidence speaks to that, for me, the evidence speaks to innocence. I think that there's, you know, it's almost unfathomable as you talk about the key, seriously. And you know the evidence for me is a very big thing, but also I think Stephen's behavior in the wake of this unfolding, and you can see in television interviews that he is more than ready to be giving about the situation. He's not hiding, you know. He doesn't seem to be. There's one particular interview, you know, that he expresses remorse for what's happened to her and what have you. And it makes no sense, right? So we all know when well, in Australia anyway, the majority of women are killed through partners, ex-partners. Domestic violence over here is a massive,
right?
Yeah, it's a massive issue, and I'm sure it is everywhere, but it's very prevalent over here in Australia. Today, again, another woman was killed by her husband. And I think that, you know, for me, Stephen didn't have a motive. There was no, there was no motive for a man who's been incarcerated wrongly for 18 years, who's pursuing, you know, a civil suit.
On the verge of it being highly successful.
Absolutely. To turn around and randomly take the life of somebody. Like, there's no motive there for me. You know, and I think in a crime such as this, I'm no expert on anything except a good game of Scrabble. But I think that you know,
we're gonna have to play some Scrabble at Raleigh.
Yeah.
The Wrecking Crew and I have a little house on the lake, so we can all come over and play some Scrabble.
Yeah, I'll take this all on, no problem. No, but yeah, for me, the lack of motive and the evidence speaking to innocence and planting rather than, you know, guilt. The key is inexplicable. There's no sense to that key. You know,
none.
None.
Not the DNA that's on it. Not the anything about it. Everything about it is queer. It's just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, and the motive. What motive could Stephen possibly have had? What motive did Brendan? What motive could Brendan had possibly have had?
Right.
Of course, they didn't have a motive. There was no crime committed at the Avery Salvage Yard.
I don't believe so either.
No.
I believe it was all over in the Manitowoc County gravel pit. That's my. I mean, that's what makes sense. That's why I think it makes sense that we only have like whatever it is, 40 to 60% of the bones in the fire pit. We have rivets, but we don't have all the rivets. We don't have the waist button from the jeans. I mean, if this was the original burn site, all these things would have been there. You saw the way they were sifting it, folks. I mean, all these things would have been there if it was the original site. So there's a lot of reasons. That's probably one of my big number one reasons is the bones and the fact that those things are missing from the burn pit. And then, number two for Stephen, let me see. You already said the key. You know, you guys have seen my little video about the Colburn's cabinet fantasy and the secret entrance to Narnia. Let's see. So I guess the bullet and the way that it lies, just the way that it lies in the picture that they take of it. This bullet should have been there before the jackhammering of the crack, folks. Okay, in other words, before any concrete dust was created, because technically Teresa would have been shot before they jackhammered the crack. So this bullet should have been on the ground there when all the concrete dust was being created, right? And when you look at that picture, folks, that bullet is clearly sitting on top of the veins of concrete dust. It is shiny. It doesn't, and if anybody who knows what concrete dust is like, it'll instantly make anything shiny look dull. The dust it's just what concrete dust does. It'll make anything look dull, but that bullet actually has a sheen in some places. And it wouldn't do if it had concrete dust on it. And like I said, it's sitting on top of the veins of concrete dust. Lead is a very heavy element, folks. If somebody was in there with a jackhammering and creating vibration on that floor, the lead would sink to the floor. The dust would have went all around that bullet. The bullet would have been more buried in the dust, not sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
And that is so that is probably a big number 2. The bones, the key in the cabinet, and then the magic bullet in the garage is just ridiculous beyond ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, you can take what Kathleen Zellner has put in her petitions, and, you know, for me, that you have learned professionals, you know, legal scholars, looking at all of that evidence, all of the affidavits from the experts, and still discounting it, over such a flawed investigation. That to me, again, speaks of malfeasance, because why would you not take on board? Why would you not be pursuing what actually happened? You know what I mean? It's, for me, I think, you know, and you see a lot of this on social media platforms. Stephen wasn't a nice guy, you know, he's done this before. Those things may be true, but it does not make him a murderer.
Right.
Do you know, it's, you don't have to like somebody to believe that they're innocent. You know, you might listen to Dire Straits, and you know, I'm going to struggle with that, but it doesn't mean I think you're innocent. You're guilty.
Money for nothing, you know, money for nothing. Anyways.
No, it's just like, I can't
Sultans
do it.
of Swing, no? Oh, come on.
Anyway. Absolutely not. Dire Straits and Queen, and I'm out.
Oh, wow. Come on.
No, not for me, I'm afraid.
At least you like a lot of other things that I think are good. So
good.
I'll have to make do with that. I can't believe you don't like Sultans of Swing, though. I love that song. Anyway,
I can't listen to him. But so I think
go ahead. Oh, so I was going to say the next thing we were going to talk about was you and the fact that you are so plugged into the machinations of the Wisconsin political structure over there, and that anybody who's looking to learn about what's going on in the politics there in Wisconsin, or at least in the machinations of the politics, that they can usually find that on your Twitter. You're going to usually be, you know, if there's anything going on, you're going to be very vocal about it.
Yeah, for me, particularly when we knew that the midterms were coming up and that there was the opportunity to oust Walker and to oust Schimmel, that for me was like, you know, a red rag at a bull. It's like, what can we do with this? Okay, we're not in Wisconsin, probably as far as you can get from Wisconsin, but the reach of social media, the arm is long. And I remember the day of the actual midterms, I had people in the official family group for Brendan. I had people on the Brendan Dassey Project page and people on Twitter. And we were counting as the votes were coming in, you know, and it was, for me, this was something tangible that we could affect. Whether what the outcome was going to be, we couldn't control that, but we could certainly, you know, make people aware of certain election issues, such as Foxconn that Walker had run on, you know, which was an absolute disgrace, and it still is. And Wisconsin are going to try and renegotiate it, or hopefully, get rid of it altogether. But yeah, for me to see Schimmel and Walker go was a great day. It was an absolutely brilliant day. You had Walker, who for the last 8 years refused to even look at pardons. When he took office, when he first took office, he set up the pardons board. He never staffed it, and I think it took him about 4 months, and he just disbanded it. And he said that he didn't feel that he could overturn the court's decision, that he was putting his faith in the courts. Unfortunately, the courts are, not always right, as we see. So Walker, and he was never going to look at Brendan and Stephen's case. He was never going to look at them. Whatever else he ran on, I didn't care. It was a very selfish approach that I took. I wasn't from Wisconsin, but all I cared about in those moments was what would happen if we had somebody new that came in to office. And then you had someone like Governor Evers, who, having won the midterm in the December, is already putting to the Pardons Advisory Committee board together. And sitting on that are former Supreme Court justices. You've got legal secretaries. You've got law enforcement officers. You've got Dean Strang. And this committee are going to inform Governor Evers on criminal justice reform in Wisconsin. So I know a lot of people at the moment, the temperature out there is, he's not doing anything. Now, governors took office on the 7th of January. He's just finished his first 100 days. Let's give the man some time, because, previously, Wisconsin, Stephen and Brendan were stuck with Schimmel and Walker. Schimmel, as we know, unfortunately was using the Holbach family to propel Brendan's case continuously through the courts. And that, for me, no doubt tied into dark money, tied into election issues, the whole thing. Whereas now we have Evers, who is, I think I made a quote. He said, prioritizing people, not prisons. In 8 years, 8 years of Walker, you never got anything like that. The man never went near a prison. He never visited a prison.
Well, I think he was making money off of the privatization of them, though. Maybe secretly. But I'll tell you what else he was doing. He went through a phase of sending Wisconsin prisoners out of state prisons, and was taken in cash from doing that as well. Wow. So, we were, not say we, but the legal teams were not going to get anywhere with Walker and Schimmel on board. I thought Peter Jackson's dismantling of Schimmel's personality and his stance was just poetry. It was poetry. Yeah, I like him. I like Peter Jackson. Well, I like him because he did Lord of the Rings, but I also love him because he's so vocal about all this. So absolutely. And I think, I'm hopeful, as a. I should maybe reach out to him for him. Anyway, sorry.
In terms of what's to come, we wait, we sit and we wait for Brendan's team. But I think, with somebody like Evers, we have a much better shot, and that's worth something, So if people, there's a few blogs that I really delved into Walker and his, tough on crime stance, and he was pretty much funded by some pretty dark money, and for want of a better term, he was never going to invest in prisons. He was never going to invest in criminal justice reform, because it didn't suit the people that were paying Scott Walker.
Right.
So for me, I think let's be a little bit more patient with Governor Evers, and criminal justice reform for sure. In terms of the Attorney General, again, when the midterms were happening, people were saying about his Peg's son and all that type of stuff, and I was like, yes, but he's not Schimmel. He's not Schimmel, and we already know what Schimmel's about. We don't know what Josh Cale's about. So, you know, for me, it was like, Schimmel's not going to move. We don't know if Cal's not going to move, so let's give him a go.
Yeah,
And
it's true,
I mean,
but Cal is also Peggy's son.
yes,
Which is a downer, but you know.
But it doesn't necessarily mean. It does not necessarily mean that he is going to
Right.
behave the same way as his mother.
Right.
You know, I think, you know, like my dad, I don't necessarily behave the same way as
Right.
him. You know, I think that as a community, we get involved in conspiracy so quickly,
Right.
conspiracy of thought that, okay, there's this connection, so that must mean this, and we're not going to get anywhere. I don't necessarily believe that. I'm definitely somebody who is a glass half full until I'm shown otherwise. I know that Kathleen's first interaction hasn't been ideal, but that's not to say that going forward it's going to be the same, or it's going to maintain the same tone. We just don't know, you know.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, if they
for
had
me,
any sense, they would start to relent on their attitudes towards Brendan, but I don't think they have any sense. So anyway.
yeah.
Oh, then again, he has just been shifted to a prison that is more geared towards rehabilitation. So maybe.
And here you have an example of, okay, so Brendan Dassey is in maximum security, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't feel that Brendan's that much of a threat, that we're going to move him to a medium security facility. So for me, that even though Brendan should not be in any type of facility, the fact that he was deemed suitable for a medium security shows me that the Wisconsin Department of Justice realize that they don't have a dangerous individual in front of them. Is that your Dr. Pepper?
Yes.
Is that your, yeah.
You can hear the fizz.
Yeah. But you know, even with Brendan now, he has a lot more freedom. He's enjoying a lot more time outside of his cell. You know, I don't like to talk too much about what he's doing because I don't like to invade his privacy.
Right.
But I think you know, particularly he's only 1 hour from home. They're within reach. You know,
That's cool.
Yeah, and particularly for his family,
That means he'll get more visits, so that's cool for him.
Absolutely. And they have things like a restaurant, so families can come in during the week and sit down and have dinners with their loved ones. You know, so yeah, there's a lot more for him to do, and as you said, it's about rehabilitation. So we shall see, but I hold hopes that the second half of 2019 are going to be very interesting.
Yeah, we hope, certainly.
Yeah.
Things are just getting interesting now with all this disingenuosity, as I've deemed it. Coming out of the state of Wisconsin right now. You know, so things are definitely getting heated up. And I know when we were there in Melbourne, since you were there with me, you know, they were talking about the fact that they are actually right now at the point where Stephen was at the end of Making a Murderer, where they can file a petition for post-conviction relief and an MPCR. And so they're basically at the point where Stephen was then. So and it makes sense to me that they are just sitting back right now, watching Zellner with her investigators and watching her blaze through and watching all the sparks fly, and they're just gonna come by and just go, okay, yeah, that might work for us. That could help us. That part of the investigation might work for Brendan. And they can just kind of go through, cherry pick all the stuff they need and go, okay, now we have a solid motion for post-conviction relief that they can put forth, right? So it's like, that's what they were saying, that they were at that stage. And so I thought that was brilliant that they brought that up. So, I mean, moving forward, there's probably going to be something exciting as they continue to draw more and more of the BS that's coming out of this, whole thing.
For sure. And another thing that we've got to remember, and I think it was a takeaway for me from the Melbourne event, was they talked about, all of these people, these eminent amici curiae that were, if I pronounce that correct, I can say certiorari, but I'm not sure about that one. but they talk about all of these people and agencies and psychologists and academia and whatever.
Former prosecutors and law enforcement.
Yeah, they're still around. They're still supporting Brendan. And I know that because of Dave Thompson from Wicklander Zalowski. As I was speaking to you earlier, Dave was extremely generous in answering some questions for me that I had posed in regards to, how he got involved, how Wicklander Zalowski got involved, and what it meant to him and how it affected him, and he was exceptional to deal with. And it struck me that the caliber of people, of subject matters that have been brought in to support Brendan is really something else. It's really something special. And for me, I have this immense faith in the science and expertise of these people to procure Brendan's freedom with his team. And from Melbourne, I remember just looking around at the audience in the auditorium, and one of the things that struck me was it's full, it's packed. There's all these people. Brendan has no idea about these people. He doesn't know that he's affected every single one of these people's lives to the point that they've been compelled to come and listen to his lawyers. To give any tidbits of Brendan that we could possibly grab onto. It was like a tangible connection to Brendan and this injustice by being there and just being part of that audience. And I'm sure people who have been part of the audience in other countries and whatever. For me, it's like we have to win. There is too much. There is just too
momentum
much in Brendan's. Yeah, for sure. But Melbourne was pretty special for sure.
It was. It was head and shoulders above the show in Sydney. Sorry to the Duke of NWord, but actually, Duke of NWord, I do love you because you let us put up our banner and people take pictures with it, and that kind of was a little bit exciting and fun. So thank you for that, Duke of NWord. But honestly, the actual show itself was better in Melbourne. It was fuller. It was, it was a little more candid, where Drizzen was actually trying to engage the crowd a bit and get a little bit of audience participation. I don't know that he expected to get the heckling from the Mad Scotsman exactly, but hey, it went over well. People thought it was funny. So, anyways.
I was about 2 seats behind you and I could see Paul doing it. I just thought, this is classic. It's absolutely classic. But I think what you have to take into consideration too, Duke of NWord, is that you had, Stephen, Lauren Ryder and David Rudolph, probably with a hefty helping of jet lag.
They were probably still a little,
Oh, for sure. They landed that day. They landed that morning. Right. So, I don't know about you, but I can't walk with jet lag, let alone think. You know what I mean? So,
I got off a plane in LA and immediately went to work.
See, I remember speaking to you in Melbourne and saying, how are you doing this? Like, you guys were everywhere and you were traveling.
Oh, man.
I was like, I was tired just watching it, But,
it was great. It was so much fun. I mean, after, we flew down to Melbourne, and then after that, we stayed in Melbourne. We went over to Marvel Stadium. We caught the St. Kilda versus Gold Coast footy match, and almost got in trouble with our banner there. And, so we had fun. Hey, we had fun.
It was good. It was good.
As long as it didn't, they let us keep it and didn't mess with us. As long as it wasn't an advertisement and it didn't have a racially charged message and it didn't have either one of those things. So we were, they were just like, okay, go ahead and put it away. So But of course, I tweeted saying that we almost caused an international incident just because it sounded good. But anyway.
There's nothing wrong with a little bit of speculation, Richard.
A little embellishment, right?
Absolutely. But
all right,
yeah.
I am going to give the link for Allie and Scooby to be able to join us here. Although I haven't seen either of them comment for a minute, but anyway, here's the link for Allie and Scooby, guys. Mr. Capaldi's here. Asking why he felt like that Stephen and Laura didn't really talk about Stephen or Zellner at all.
But that's not what they were there for. I remember seeing Paul mentioning that. And I think if you look over the last 3 years, in many interviews, Laura talks about the fact that they're not lawyers for Stephen, and it's not really their place to comment. And I think that, and it's one of the reasons that I think it was so impactful what they were doing, is that it was on Brendan. This was not about Stephen Avery. It was Brendan's lawyers, and of course David Rudolph talking about the staircase, who I thought was quite a revelation and extremely interesting to listen to. But I do take on board what Paul said, but I don't think that was the reasoning behind what they were doing. And
Right.
I think personally, I think it would have been odd to have brought Stephen in or to have brought Kathleen in. There's probably ethical concerns with doing that, particularly when they represent Brendan. So,
right.
I understand people may have been hoping to have heard something, but I mean, this is just my opinion. You would think that it's not really an ethical thing to do to talk about a co-defendant and what's going on, but that could just be me.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
All right, so I think they're going to be joining us here in a minute. Try this link and then what?
Hello.
Hey, there's Allie.
Hi.
Hey, Allie.
Hi, Allie. How you doing?
Allie, Tracy, Allie.
Nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Doing great. I had to shorten your link, so I
okay.
Yeah. So I linked it in chat for Scooby, the one that I said try this link and then I didn't link it. Wow, I'm stupid. Try that link there. Sorry, Scooby. Hopefully that works for her.
I think Scooby's still getting her tech together because I haven't seen her comment for a minute. So
hi, Truth Monster.
So, what do you think, Allie? Let me ask you, what are your two favorite reasons or two biggest reasons why Brendan's innocent?
Well, I guess just to be like really super general, my biggest reason is that you can clearly see by watching the interviews / interrogations, every single piece of evidence fed to him, what they wanted to find, they fed him. Mm-hmm. Whatever they wanted, whatever story they wanted him to tell, they gave him. Everything. The couple of things that he offered on his own clearly were guesses because they were encouraging him to guess. Nope, that's not the right answer. Try again. And he would guess something silly like cutting hair. And that knife was put underneath the bloody knife was put underneath the seat in the RAV4. Stuff like that he offered, that when they go look for that, they can't find it. There's no trace of it. It's completely disproven. So that would be my number one.
I also think the way that they kept suggesting the wires and things hanging in the garage to him, and like they kept doing it, like they were expecting him to run with that, but like he just didn't have the imagination that they had to figure out what it was that they were expecting he might have done with that, right? I mean, so I think that's another thing, about the things they suggest.
It's just the whole interrogation. For me, it's interesting, and I've posed this to people that won't answer the question, and I understand why, because they're in the profession. But where is it for people that Brendan goes from being an interview to a suspect? Is there like a cardinal moment where what Brendan is talking about crosses over into being a suspect? And of course, we know that journey is led by Wiegert and Fassbender. For me, we go back to the whole interrogation of Mishcot. He had been threatened with being charged with mutilation of corpse. He had not been read his Miranda rights, so they allowed him to go back to class. Then they brought him back again, and apparently he was a witness. But if you are going to threaten somebody with a mutilation of a corpse, and then you bring them back as a witness, that to me, Richard, fits in with your disingenuosity. Right? It's such an incredibly tragic circumstance of what Brendan was put through, and how they extracted that information from him. And I revert back to that comment about when he says he slashes the throat, and they don't bat an eyelid, because it's not what they're looking for.
Right.
It's why we all move so much is because it's so incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly tragic. And Brendan as an individual, compounds that feeling of how awfully wrong this is, but yeah, I think, when we talk about the control question, the whole thing for me was controlled.
Right.
And
right.
it was just, there was a narrative that they had, and there's no doubt that there are elements where Brendan, meanders into little, ideas of what may have happened, and he gives them something totally outrageous, that they don't even want to hear, and you can hear that they're not even interested when he veers off into where he thinks things happened.
Right.
But
Well, when he gets too crazy, that's when they're reining him in and refeeding him another fact point. So and then letting him run with that, or trying to let him run with that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, you have a second reason, Allie?
Well, that sort of goes along with what we were just talking about. I guess my next reason that pops into my head would be just when they're trying to, like when they need him to say something about the bullet, when they know that she's been shot in the head, supposedly, and they need him to give a location where they might find evidence of this. And he gives them the location outside the garage where she was shot, and they don't like that answer.
Right.
And they move it inside the garage. No, it was inside the garage, and he puts her inside the RAV4. Nope, that's not going to work. We need her on the floor. And they change that location until he gets the right answer. And then, okay, this is where we're going to find
us that to
bullet.
begin with?
Yeah, because you didn't tell me to tell you that.
My God.
Well, as we know, he couldn't think of it.
He couldn't think of it.
And they also
couldn't think of it,
And they also couldn't plant that bullet underneath snow. So it needed to be inside the garage. It's obviously not the RAV4. Where's it going to be? It's going to be on the floor. So that they knew where they were going to put that bullet. They didn't have a lot of options there. So
although Fenn brings up a good one, O'Kelly. It's like one word sums up an entire argument, right? O'Kelly.
I found something really interesting about Michael O'Kelly, and it's something that I think deserves a little bit more digging into. He, around the 8th of May, he's emailing Fassbender, and he emails Fassbender and talks about that he has a friend. Now, this friend hasn't seen any of the discovery evidence from the defense, but he feels that this friend has something to offer the case, this type of case. Now, the friend is a sheriff of a county in Iowa. And I've had a look on Twitter, as you do when you're nosy, and he's the sheriff over in Iowa, of the same county. And for me, what was O'Kelly doing recommending the services of a sheriff in Iowa to Fassbender in Brendan's case? What is that?
Yeah.
What can that possibly mean? Like I don't understand it. It's in black and white in the case files, and I can't pronounce the county because I'm really bad at that sort of stuff. But he plainly offers him up to Fassbender for the case against Brendan, which I think is incredibly interesting. He's, from what I can see, he's not mentioned again. But yeah, I find that really interesting. I think O'Kelly obviously was an agent for the state. I don't think there would be.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be any, reason to not believe that.
Yeah, which brings us to the polygraph, which Drizzen recently alluded to, right? And everything that we find out about that. So before O'Kelly does what he did to Brendan on May 12th, back on April, I don't know, whatever, sometime in April, Brendan is very insistent upon asking for a polygraph test, wants to prove it, wants to, try to prove his innocence or that he didn't do it. So he's insistent upon it. Number one, Reed handbook tells you right off the bat, and a suspect that is insistent upon being polygraphed, that is usually a strong indicator of innocence. Not saying it's a foregone conclusion, but they're saying it's a strong indicator. Okay. So, okay, you got one strong indicator. Okay. Then they actually do the polygraph test. And the actual results are that Brendan passed it with flying colors. So, like, he basically didn't do anything with Teresa Halbach. I did another video where I showed the questions and stuff. He basically had nothing to do with any of this, and he passed with flying colors. But that's not what O'Kelly told him on May 12th. O'Kelly told him that the 96% percentage or whatever that he was seeing, I think it was 96. He's asking Brendan, what do you think that means? And Brendan thinks, oh, I passed, because that's what Brendan expects, because he didn't do it, right? Yeah. And so Kelly goes, he's basically like shaking his head or whatever, basically. And basically this is telling Brendan that he failed. So now Brendan's confused. And then that's when O'Kelly starts his whole thing about, you need to tell the truth. You need to tell, this is what you need to write. You need to draw this. You need to draw this there. You need to draw this here. You need to do this, and tells him what to do for the rest of the day. And Brendan just, okay, does it.
Yeah.
But
he also lies to Kaczynski.
Right.
He
exactly.
also
that blows my mind.
Tells Kaczynski now a third thing, which is, he tells Brendan one thing, tells Kaczynski a second thing, which is inconclusive. And then it all turns out in the end that he actually passed it with flying colors. So it's like, how many times do I have to see some agent of the state, or actually in this case, members of Brendan's own defense team, acting as agents of the state? How many times do I need to see this? Or how many times do the Falcons of the world or the Dorian Hawkmoons of the world, these, how many times do they need to see this stuff before it matters? How much? Like, how high does the mountain have to get before the mountain matters? That's my question. And that's what it is with this case. If it was only just a couple mistakes here and there, that'd be a different story. It's phenomenally ridiculous mistakes all over the damn place constantly, with ridiculous consistency. Yes, I like that word too.
Yeah.
So,
and as we touched on before, I'm not sure if this was off air or on air, because I've got the memory of a fish, but we know that a polygraph is inadmissible in court, right? And there are good reasons for that, because it's so open to variabilities and physiological reactions and what have you. And we also know that the Reed technique that was used with Brendan and so many other juveniles, and I'm sure adults, was developed by the same person who developed the polygraph. Yet when you have a contested confession that goes up against a judge, the fact that it's, the Reed technique, they're rarely suppressed. But yet they won't allow the same sort of methodology or thinking that's in a polygraph, which, is based on behaviors. It's based on physiological reactions and mannerisms, which the Reed technique ultimately is as well. That for me is another anomaly. I don't know how people marry the two of those things and say, well, that's okay. Polygraph's inadmissible, of course, so it should be. Reed technique, it elicits false confessions. We do know that, but no, it's fine. It's fine. Right. We're going to allow that in. Brendan's confession should never have been allowed in.
I know.
That is it. It was a farce. As I said before, it's a tragic farce that's cost that young man, going on 14 years of his life. Right. And recently, I don't know if you saw, but one of Australia's more prominent wrongful conviction cases involving a gentleman by the name of Andrew Mallard. He was wrongfully convicted, I think it was around 14 years, and he was out for 2 years and living in LA. And he was hit and killed a couple of days ago. So when people say, you know, when you see it coming on your timeline, somebody else is exonerated, they've spent 26 years, somebody spent 10 years. Every single one of those minutes count. Every single one of those minutes count. You have so many people who are exonerated come out with you know, horrendous health issues. But for me, it really struck me with this man that had spent 2 years of freedom, 14 years incarcerated. His life was taken like that. And those 14 years, you know, should never have been taken from him. And things like that just, it's not
Another
great.
Another thing that's powerful to me is I've been watching some YouTube videos, you know, last couple of days, and I posted them on Twitter and stuff like that. But been watching them, and they talk about, you know, there's this constant comparison of Brendan's confession and interrogation and parallels to West Memphis 3 and Central Park 5. You know, when people are making those connections, looking at Brendan's confession and making those connections, like those are the two things they're immediately thinking of, that tells you something.
For sure.
It's, for me, it's huge. You know, I mean, if that's making people who are interested in this sort of stuff, if that's the first two things that pop to their mind when they're thinking of looking at Brendan, I think that's powerful. Yeah, definitely. So, the other thing I was going to say was to sum up my point, what I was making earlier about how, number one, he asked for it. He was insisting on it repeatedly for the polygraph. Then he actually passed it. It wasn't represented that way, but he actually did. So these are two huge indicators of Brendan telling the truth, two indicators of his innocence that were just ignored by his own defense. And, you know, so it's like I said, so I think I forgot to make that one little point there, that it's those two things together, his insistence upon it and the fact that he passed it, are a very strong indicator for Brendan of his innocence. So
right,
for sure.
He's a child, and he doesn't know any better, so he really believes that this is going to prove it to you. This is going to prove that I'm telling you the truth, that I'm not lying and I didn't do it. Like, he's not trying to, I'm going to fool the polygraph. I'm going to fool you all. Ha ha. Like, he really believes that this is going to prove it all and it'll be over and you'll stop bothering me and accusing me or whatever. And then it does. Like,
as Drizzen said, you know, Brendan's not the kind of guy that can, you know, fool a polygraph test. He just doesn't have that in him. You know,
I'm sure he wouldn't have even gone into the situation going, you know what, I'm going to get a polygraph and I'm going to try and trick it. Like, seriously, you know what I mean? You know, we've seen Brendan throughout that process, and you know, this is a young guy that was scared. This is a young man that had no idea on how to navigate what was happening to him. I can't imagine the fear that Brendan had, particularly layering on top of what was happening to him with his vulnerabilities and his close connection with his mother. Having that taken away from him and having to deal with these situations on his own. You know, a lot of people have said to me, Tracy, why are you involved? Why, you know, is it from a maternal level? It's not. It's not a maternal level. It's something a bit more aggressive than being at a maternal level, if that makes any sense. You know, I have children, of course, but there's nothing about how I feel about this situation that can be termed maternal. You know, I just think, what he went through, we know for like the first year that, you know, he was extremely upset every single night. And yet so many adults who were charged with protecting this young man failed. I mean, we can go to Fremgen, we can go to Edelston, we can go to these people who agreed with the prosecution. No, the jury don't need to see how Brendan recants. They don't need to see that. And do you know what else they don't need? They don't need an expert on false confessions. We don't need to educate the jury on false confessions. Like, how ineffective does it have to get until a higher court goes, yeah, that's ineffective? Okay, we had Duffin acknowledge how egregious Kaczynski's behaviour was, but they were still unable to do anything about it. And it's just, Kaczynski was the catalyst, I think, and we Brendan ends off with Fremgen and Edelstein, and for me, that whole trial, he never stood a chance. There was not one adult in his corner, except obviously his parents. There's certainly no legal advocate for him. You can even look at interviews with Fremgen and Edelstein post having represented Brendan. They do these sit-down interviews. There's not 1 ounce of commitment to Brendan when they talk about him. There's not an ounce of passion, which I think we can all agree that one thing when you do get involved in advocating for Brendan is that it elicits some sort of passionate response in you. That you're compelled. You're compelled to be a part of trying to change this for him.
Yeah, I would also make the argument to those people that ask you why. It's one possible answer is because apathy is the enemy, my friends. Yeah, apathy is the enemy.
It's like walking away.
We don't care. I love that analogy that Rudolph made, where he was talking about paralleling kind of these criminal justice issues to Nazi Germany, and he was talking about the guy that saw the SS men come and take away the Jews. And he thought, well, that's not my religion. It doesn't affect me. So whatever. Yeah. Life goes on. Then he sees the SS come back and take Catholics. And he's like, well, I'm not Catholic, so it doesn't bother me. Life goes on. Then he sees them come back for, the next one, the Muslims. So it's like, and then, oh, well, I'm not Muslim. So until eventually they're coming for him, right? And now his apathy isn't so strong. Suddenly he cares, but no one's left. No one's left to help him, and that's what it comes down to. That's why it's important, people. Apathy is the enemy. It's easy for us to put our heads under the rock and just go, you know what? Life goes on. I don't want to think about it. That's easy to do, but it's ultimately unhealthy.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to. I discussed this with Laura Narida in Melbourne, and I can't explain it. I can't explain it to anybody. That the reason that I'm so compelled, and to walk away from this is like walking away from a crime scene. It's like walking away from something, and I know that there are hundreds, thousands of wrongful convictions happening worldwide. I know that we have wars. I know because I'm involved in it through my job. But at the core of everything, it's like a cause finds you. And for me...
Hey, there's Scooby.
Scooby!
Oh, did you guys start?
What do you mean did we start? This is the same live I started an hour and a half ago. But here we are. We're live. Hi, Scooby.
It is? It's not live on my YouTube.
Oh, maybe you hit pause or something. But yeah, it's the same live stream.
Oh.
Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah.
Hi, Tracy.
Scooby, how you doing?
Some Vegemite toast.
Yeah.
No,
good woman. Good woman.
Computer must have locked up or something. Oh, I'm so sad. Well, carry on talking. Let me figure this out.
Oh my God.
You're like a brilliant tourism ad, you guys, with your Vegemite.
Oh, I just love it.
But
I can't believe you don't like it.
It's so good.
The key is a little bit, a little bit.
Oh, I know.
And a little bit of Vegemite.
I'm going to try it with peanut butter. We'll see if that improves it.
Oh, that's probably...
Oh, no. No. That's like... That's wrong. That's Americanizing Vegemite. It's like...
I read it this way. It kind of smells like chocolate to me when I open it. Kind of tiny bit smells like chocolate. So peanut butter and chocolate go together. Hey, it's a theory. We'll see how it works out.
I hold fierce for your taste buds. That's all I can say.
But have you really
Hey,
been
the
live?
Vegemite by itself sends them to running. So, sorry, Scooby.
But have you really been live for like an hour?
Yeah, it's the same one you were commenting on. This is the same
Yeah.
live. I've just added you and Allie now. That's all.
Well,
Yeah, it's the same one you were commenting on. This is the same
oh, now I have to
That's
mute.
me. I recognize me.
Yeah, there you
That's always healthy, Richard. That's a healthy thing.
Well, I was commenting, but there was nothing going on the screen. Isn't that weird? It's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy.
It is.
I think you guys were locking me out.
It's the agents of Wisconsin.
Man.
Donna Marie Snowden says cheese and Vegemite.
Yes. Add a little lettuce in as well. It's just lovely.
Karen Gainey says she's an Aussie and don't eat it.
Traitor.
That's funny.
Well, I'm sad, so I've been missing the chat. But anyway, I'll have to catch up. So I'm sorry, Tracy.
You're not,
Scooby, I'm so delighted to meet you, like virtually, but it's lovely.
I know.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to wait until June.
No.
In fact, I'm gonna let you guys chat for a second while I go to the restroom, if you don't mind.
No, this was totally impromptu.
Yeah.
He just asked me about 15 minutes ago. I would have had some Bob.
Do you know, I was considering that myself, actually. Yes, yeah. Good old Bob. He's really pulling out all the stops for grumpiness now.
Oh, you made me laugh with your post.
I love Bob. I'll take him anyway. He wants to be.
Know.
You know.
That's just Bob. That
yeah.
Be exactly him. He would not like the phones.
Yeah. No, my whenever I take my daughter somewhere, she gets accosted on my behalf. Like, I'll say to her, please do this for me, right? And when we were at the Bob Dylan concert, I was like, you have to get pictures. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, I forgot where I am. And I was like, you have to take pictures. And she did, and the bouncer came up behind her and shook her by the shoulders and said, you can't be taking pictures. And she was furious with me. But sure, you know, you do things for your mum.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. So this is what it is when there's a hangout with a few people. Richard told me, you know, this is sort of how it plays out. Like, this is not something I'm at all comfortable with, just putting it out there, talking and putting myself out there. I much prefer playing with alphabets and words, but yeah, it's good.
Well, brave of you to come on. I know I was really, well, Allie is old hat at this, but I'm still, you know, I've done a few videos now.
Yeah.
It just took him about a year to talk me into it.
Yeah.
And I was really apprehensive about it, but once I get, and I'm getting better, but it's hard, you know, when I'm doing, well, now we're just sort of chit-chatting, but when I'm trying to talk about something, you know, my sciencey stuff, it's hard to get used to talking to, even though I'm kind of talking to him, that helps a little bit, but it's hard to get used to, like Allie. I mean, I do really admire the people that do these videos more.
Yeah.
It's harder than I thought, because just it's hard for me to talk to a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of teaching, but you have like a live audience to interact with that really, to talk to the wall. Or to know, you know, and then I look back at my videos and I'm like, oh my God. You know?
Yeah, I will not be looking back at this. I do not want to see what I've said. You know.
And I'm trying to get better, and then how much you said, like the first time I was like, and you know. Yeah.
No, I have a great respect for everybody that does whatever they can to further the awareness for this case, you know, on whatever platform they choose to do it on. You know, I have great respect for people using the skills that they have to further Brendan and Stephen's case. you know. So I applaud everybody in whatever action they're taking to do that.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's all about awareness, folks. What was that we were talking about the other day, Allie? We'll repeat ourselves a couple thousand times, so long as we're reaching at least a couple new ears each time.
Yeah.
People are still asking the questions. I'll gladly answer them, so they have the
Yeah.
answers if I can, or
Yeah.
point them in the right direction to find it if I don't know.
Yeah.
And Scoobs too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's over there opening up a clinic on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll do any platform. I'll use any platform available.
Hey man, everybody's hungry for it. Everybody keeps talking about the mtDNA, man. Everybody wants to keep learning about mtDNA. So
I know
it's fascinating, really. So
it is. That was
Mm-hmm.
great. That's great. So I'm very excited. So, but I'm just so impressed and amazed still how people like you, Tracy, from Australia, and just all of the people that I've met from all over the world. There's a lot of people from Australia.
Nice.
There's a couple here now, but just from all over the world. Isn't it amazing that people are have come together for this cause? That's just because, you know, whatever, people of all different, I mean, not just, you know, nationalities or countries or walks of life or political views and ages have all come together, young people, old people, you know, because of because we all, you know, deep down at the heart have a common sense of humanity. I really believe that this shared sense that this is just wrong, you know, wrong for to happen to, you know, a young boy, you know, a man, anyone, you know, whatever the system, and that, you know, it's that gives you hope, you know, gives me hope in the midst, because it's easy, and I'm sure, you know, Eric, we've talked about this a little bit, how you know when you work, you know, toward delve into this world of the corruption and the crime, you know, everything that's wrong, it's easy to get really negative and down and think, you know, you know, the world is full of rotten people and and stuff, and true, but it's also full of just wonderful people. I mean, look at all the amazing people that we've met, you know, in doing this, and that has far greater power than
I had a blast at Raleigh last year and got to meet a bunch of people. Had a blast in Australia, getting to meet a bunch of you know, a whole new bunch of great supporters out there. That's, you know, it's fun, and it's, you know, kind of also just kind of gives me more, you know, it spurs me to continue, because, you know, there's all these people out there that feel so passionate about it. They're not all willing to get on YouTube, like, you know, me or Allie or, you know, Casey, or, you know, any of these other people who are willing to, you know, get on YouTube and talk about it constantly, but people contribute in their own way. You know, you got the Penelope Muldoons out there on Twitter, and Linda K. Breyer, History Speaks, you know, and all these people out there trying to get the message out, and it's all effective. It's all putting this information in front of other people's eyes, you know, and giving other people a chance to discover it. And so the more people that are talking about it, whether they're like me and Allie and people who are, you know, in your face, or whether it's, you know, quietly doing it on Facebook or Twitter, it's all important. It's all, you know, reaching more people, more ears, more eyes.
Yeah. And I think, just going back to what you said, Scoobs, in regards to the humanity of the situation, there's something that's very particular to Brendan and Stephen about this as well. You know, like, I'm sure, like lots of you, we watched the confession tapes, and we've seen other juveniles like Raphael Burns going through, you know, what are seemingly wrongful convictions. But there's something particular. I mean, Netflix have released, you know, quite a few documentaries since, but nothing has grabbed the public psyche likes what has happened to Brendan and Stephen. You know, the story of Stephen of 18 years previously of wrongful conviction, you know, and now serving, you know, another 14 years. For me, and I think most people who know me, I do believe in Stephen's innocence, but my advocacy sits with Brendan, and that I see the amount of advocacy for Stephen, and he's in very, very good, clever hands out there. So it's not like they miss me. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's something particular to Brendan Dassey that has just moved me to the point of I can't stop, and I won't stop until he's free. And you know, I can't explain that in any way that makes sense to people. You know, I'm lucky I have a family who have put up with me for the last 3 years while I've been doing my bits and pieces. But I think there's something very particular to Stephen and Brendan that has moved so many people.
Yeah.
You know, because we know there are other cases out there. You know, Charles Erickson. You know, there are so many more wrongful conviction cases, and I know yourself, Erekose, that you've been involved in highlighting a lot of them, and Ali. But I can't put my attention anywhere until I know Brendan's free.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to branch into other cases. I agree with you. I have taken an interest in other cases, but it's hard for me to dive into those the way that I've dove in here. It's hard for me to put that kind of intense amount of time into my other cases. I do give them time, and I am passionate about them, but there is something about that's keeping my main focus. Brendan holds it, you know. So,
but I mean, it's admirable that you do that. You know, that you do give time to other cases. It's extremely admirable, and those cases deserve somebody being a voice for them. It's you know, if we tell stories for people that can't, that's a powerful and humbling thing that we can do for people. And it doesn't matter, like Scoop said, where in the world we sit. You know, we're global citizens. We should all be moved. We should all be outraged by what happens to people around us.
And injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I mean, truer words were never spoken. If it can be accepted and we can look aside and act like it doesn't matter in one place, then that can happen in many places. And it's a slippery slope, folks. Apathy is the enemy. I'm gonna say it again. We have to care. We do. I know it's hard. I know we have kids and life and households and things, and it's all tough and everything. And you know, it's hard to make the time for stuff like this. But it's important that we try to. It's important that we, at least, if you're not, you know, if you can't dig into it as intensely as, say, Tracy or I or Ali or, you know, some of these other people who are here on a daily basis, you know, kind of thing. But at least if you can donate sometime in your week to just tweet about it, talk about it. You know, keep up with the case by watching those of us who are on it every day. You know, keep up with the case and just continue to talk about it. One thing I do, somebody was asking, one thing I do to help reach eyes that wouldn't normally see it. I actually sometimes post about Brendan and Stephen on my own personal Facebook news feed. Okay, so that the people that are on my friends list that wouldn't normally follow this stuff will see some of the stuff that I post, and maybe some of them eventually will go, oh. Wow, you know, and I know that some of them have watched the documentaries because I have had some discussions with some of my Facebook friends and everything. And I know they've seen the documentaries. I don't think they follow me really yet, but I think some of them have watched a couple of my videos because they get posted. Anytime Penelope Muldoon shares one of my videos on her Facebook page, she tags me, so it automatically shows up on my newsfeed. So these are all things that help people that wouldn't normally see this stuff to get a glance at it. And that's the type of thing you can do. That's what's important about Twitter. Twitter is a completely public forum, and so anybody can see your tweet. So there's a chance new eyes can see it there. It's like, these are the things to do to try to catch those new eyes, catch those new ears.
And it's interesting how far the the conversations go. A good friend of mine from my previous job that I recently left, he was backpacking up in Sydney, and he was staying at a hostel. And of all the places, he met a traveling a girl from Manitowoc. And because he knew me well, he spoke to her about Brendan. He spoke to her about the case, and she knew very little of it. She knew very, very, very little of it.
That's
So
one thing Tracy Strency says.
Yeah.
About there's a lot of people. There's like a section of people that are very much against, you know, keeping Stephen and Brendan in. There's a small amount of people, a little smaller than that group, that are very passionate about the fact that they were, you know, done wrong. And then she said, and then there's just that huge group of people that just don't care. Once again, folks, apathy is the enemy.
Yeah.
So
Don't care, or they bought into the lies that this is disrespectful to Teresa and her family.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them feel that way too.
The mantra that you know, and I've talked about that before. Well, you know, I'm in Wisconsin, and well, one of the reasons I'm Scooby, I haven't been able to, well, you know, and I don't want to go into a lot of it here, but for unfortunately, for personal reasons, and not personal, my personal reasons, but sadly, because of personal and there are people in my family, extended family and near family, that it would be very unpopular. So if they knew that I was even doing this. It was funny. It was funny. My friend Lois, you know, Erekose, who
right. Oh, was on the video with us the other night.
Yeah. And she said, oh, your mom and dad must be so proud that you're doing this. Like, my mom would have a conniption. I mean, and don't, I mean, I shouldn't even say this stuff now if they ever see this, but, you know, and they're wonderful people, but they are, you know, and they are having some health issues now too, but, you know, they are just, I was going to say, typical Wisconsin people who, you know, I live in Milwaukee, the big city far, but, you know, they just believe you just, you know, the state is right. You just don't question authority or this. And, you know, I was at a, you know, like a family dinner, and I just said something about it, and I was like, oh, you mean that creepy guy up in, you know, they just, and again, they hear the media, the Wisconsin media is so biased. I mean, if that's all that you heard. And then I think I have a sister-in-law who's like a friend of, you know, Teresa Hallbach's or something. So she's kind of, so you get that, like, you're being, again, it's considered, you know, in bad taste to.
Yeah.
So sadly, one of the reasons people, you know, you sometimes you get the, well, why can't you just be yourself? And to you guys, you know, like, know who I am, obviously, but in general, part of it is because of my close personal and professional ties. It would cause and it would make life more difficult. I think it's getting easier, and I think someday, you know, I'm becoming more and more open. But you know, and then of course there were like the guilter stalkers,
right? Yeah.
Although most of those are just the crazies, you know. Now,
hey.
actually,
Hey, look, I was reluctant. You know, I didn't want to say anything other than Erekose, but last year at Raleigh, when the camera crew was standing in front of me and they were like, okay, you got to tell us who you are and whatever and blah, blah, blah and stuff like that. It was like, at that point, I'm like, well, I do want to talk about the control question. So, okay. I basically just said, that's it. I'm me. This is me. I'm, you know, I basically, that's it. At that point, I decided I'm all in. So that's basically the way I look at it now. So, you know.
Scooby, in terms of being in Wisconsin, has there been any sort of notable change in like the public temperature from Kathleen Zellner's filings? Or
No, because nobody hears about them.
okay,
In general,
Right. The news
and,
outlets kind of don't touch it.
it what it says to me is that it must be amazing how the media is controlled by the state and vice versa. They work together because no, you would not know about anything going on with these cases.
really?
Except maybe up in Milwaukee, in the Milwaukee news, there's nothing. I think of the Green Bay, which would be the station that covers
W Bay,
biggest city that would cover that Manitowoc area. They might have something.
I think they made a little blurb, but yeah, it's not something they really focus on very much.
And when you think about it, this is a historical case. I mean, and the documentary. I mean, this should be the big news, but it is. If I was not involved in this, community here, this community, YouTube, Reddit, Twitter community.
Reddit.
It's late for me.
I love it. No, that was a good one.
It's a fusion platform.
I would not know, anything about any of this. And Tracy, we were talking about this last year. I remember I was on the phone with you because it was about June, probably about the time, because it was around Summerfest, because Summerfest is a big big music festival in the world. They bill it as anyway in Milwaukee. And I was saying how, again, nothing, not to get into politics, nobody get mad at me, because I'm not saying this is right. I was just making the comparison that at the time there were some small protests going on about, what was some, families being at the border,
Okay, right.
Hey, now I don't even want to get don't judge me anyway. I'm not saying that's wrong. All I'm saying,
you done went and broached the subject now, so there you go.
The point was, okay, people that there was enough emotion that some people were coming out in the streets about that. But here we have right in our state, and this was even a year ago, so this was just really the recent things with Brendan were happening. This talk about a child being ripped from his family and horrible thing. I mean, I'm sorry, but our local government is doing something far worse.
Right. The argument can be made. Right.
Okay. I mean, you can't compare, but let's again. I know.
But I see your parallel, and it's valid. I'm
saying that. How do I? Tracy and I were talking, and I'm not saying that how do I? What do I? What can I do? What can I do to get that passion? Because I was saying here it is, and there's people, and I'm walking down the street because I live about a mile from the lakefront where this festival is going on. So there's I live in the city, so there's people all around, and there were people. Oh, and there's people on the corner with petitions and flyers, for the border and all this. And I'm thinking, oh, I should have stuff about Brendan. I should be doing something. Of course, I hadn't, thought about it ahead of time, but it was just.
So have you talked to Stacey about that yet?
Pardon me?
Have you talked to Stacey about the festival now?
No. I need to get on this, and time is flying.
Yeah.
Because, Tracy, what I would love to. Well, is he here? No, probably not. But I could talk. I have all kinds of plans for him. But what I thought I have no time to even do anything, in my own life. But I thought, and now
give him a message before June 15th, and
I'll just say, I thought it would be really, as long as he's coming, and he said he was going to stay, that in
He's
Milwaukee.
still currently coming.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I thought in Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is it's a bigger city, and then you get the Chicago people, and there's going to be this music. There's going to be a lot of people here at that time. Well, the music now Summerfest won't be going on yet, but there's another musical festival up near Manitowoc. That one that I told him about. No, I haven't followed up. But I thought if I could get him a gig in Milwaukee, and it could even be sort of like a justice rally or something. I've got every year they have this thing. It's like a John Lennon festival. I mean, obviously John Lennon doesn't come, but John Lennon. I was in. No, it's at this club.
I'd be worried if he did show up, actually. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it's an it's a piece. It's like a rally, not a rally. It's like other bands come and they do like John Lennon tribute songs, but it's like the whole theme is like peace, and anti-violence, and various groups have their little booths up with their literature and stuff. So I was envisioning like Jerry could be there with his book, and then, I don't know, we could have like information and something, and it could kind of be like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I've got to figure out, so I've got to talk to some people. I've got to know how to arrange these things to try to do something. So I thought,
I would love it if Stacy played that festival, though. If he played at least, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 of his songs, or even all of them, I'd love it.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome. Because then the people there at the festival would get all that stuff that's in his songs. I mean, that's the thing about Stacy's songs, is that they're so full of facts about the case, and questions that you should be asking yourself, and
people probably don't know. Yeah, right, Siggy, an information table. We could make a Milwaukee event, right, Sam and Blue? That's what I wanted, because I know there's a lot of people in the Milwaukee area, and even Chicago people, I think, or Illinois people, like Ellie would come up to Milwaukee, if they couldn't. So it's sort of a hub. So that's an idea I had, but people probably don't know what I'm talking about, but there is, Stacy, there's a music festival going on actually the same, almost coinciding with the rally. I think it's like 7 days. It's called the Steel Bridge a music festival.
That's the one I was thinking of.
It's in Door County, Wisconsin. If anybody knows Wisconsin, anyway, it's a little north of Manitowoc, but it's a big resort vacation area.
Okay.
And so
tourist trap.
Yes, but it's very nice. But anyway, they do have this big music festival, and I sent Stacy the information. You have to apply, and it's geared toward like independent, like singer-songwriters, and it just seemed like it would be a perfect thing.
Get on him. Message him.
And I sent him all the information. I don't know if he followed through with it.
Yeah, you got to go follow up on him.
I didn't contact people that I know. I don't. I'm not a musician, but I know a lot of. I have a lot of acquaintances. I don't have a lot of clout, but in the Milwaukee area, I could maybe get. So I don't. But if he was doing that, yeah, that would be great for him, as well as for just his songs are a good way to bring exposure. But I thought if he could do a gig in Milwaukee, that would be a way to. It would be a great way to just bring people together to raise awareness. So
yeah, I agree.
If anybody's interested, get a hold of anybody in the Milwaukee area or wants to come or help, get a hold of me.
Yeah, guys, get on Scooby. Get her to get on Stacy about it. Make sure it happens.
Yeah. I'm gonna this week. Okay, now you guys can bug me because this week, because this is gonna come fast. You know how it always happens? It's like February, and you're like, June. That's like ages away.
We're less than a week from MAM-a-thon.
I know, and now all of a sudden, it's the end of April.
The closer it gets, the more my heart is like having issues. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Well, that's how I feel. For sure. Yeah.
It's gonna come fast. So I have some I'm gonna call a woman who I think has organized events like this, who I know, and see if she would be interested, and call the guy who has this club that I'm thinking about. So this week I need to make those calls and get some people to see if I can get them interested. He's so good. I just would think that
Stacy is awesome, man.
the only reason that I can think is that people don't want to touch it because of the politics, you know, which is sad. But what really showed me how scary this is, how much power the state has, is that Milwaukee has one like independent newspaper. It's called the Shepherd Express, and it's the paper, you know, that rips on the government and rips on, you know, it's the anti.
Yeah, I've read it.
Okay, you would think they would be. I thought the Shepherd would cover this case, you know, and they'd be all over it, but nothing.
Yeah.
It's not even anything. So that's, I don't, you know, and that's where personally I struggle with how to, the filters I had, that the only thing that's gotten better is now that Kathleen's given it more credibility. I used to be more afraid because of now, you know, I get a lot of trolls on the social media, but I was a little more afraid because I've lived so close.
Yeah.
Most of them are just, you know, a little off, but
Right.
there was one that made me a little nervous because I didn't want them knowing where I lived, because I talked to a couple people from the Amanda Knox case, which I don't know if any of you are followed that or just aware, but they have that's actually where the term guilter
really?
developed, because that phenomenon of these people that some of them were family and friends of the victim,
right,
who refused to believe even after, you know, and again, in her case, it was the DNA, which I think is very similar. In fact, I could even do someday, maybe that could be another video of there's a lot of similarities between.
Well, you know, there's a chance I'm going to have Steve Moore on for MAMathon. I don't know if you guys know.
Yes.
But he actually got involved in the Amanda Knox case a bit. He flew over there and
that's going to be the way. That's going to be the way that I'm going to win him over. Because I'm going to tell him that there's so much similarity between the DNA, because that's what. Now, luckily, the Italian system, they were able to get some independent, you know, scientists to go in there and look at what was going on in that lab, and oh my dog, as Scooby would say, what a mess. That's what
BOL.
The knife in the Amanda Knox case is the bullet in the Stephen Avery case, because they found, supposedly, she was convicted because they found Meredith Kircher, the victim's blood on the knife. Well, when the independent scientists went in, it wasn't her blood, it was contamination from the lab.
Right.
And the amount was so small, and she was like over amplifying. She was too much to go into again, but she was doing all kinds of shady laboratory purposes, but she was trying to hide it. What's so just fascinating to me about this case is that it's all out in the open. Sherry Culhane is totally still here. Oh my gosh, we talk about Sherry Culhane just done so many things that were just bad lab technique, bad lab procedures.
Yeah.
So much of that, and they weren't even shy about it.
Maybe that's how she got her DNA into the control sample. It was maybe some dandruff from all that hairspray she uses to make it a helmet hair. You know, anyway.
Blind testing. But anyway, back to Steve. Yes, getting off again. But Steve, so you know, but obviously once they looked at the DNA, it was like, you know, that's basically what exonerated her. And so I need to, you know, to keep working on Steve. I told him because, you know, and the nice thing about that case is it's a good teaching model because it's all public, which is very rare in our legal system. That's one of the other problems too, all the transparency. Normally you don't see all of this stuff.
Right.
Even in this case, we don't. I don't have access.
Well, how many people are going out and paying the amount of money? I mean, how many people are like Skip Top and crowdsourcing the money to be able to go and pay for all these documents and make them available to everybody. I mean, how often does that happen in the case? You know, it's like, but it happened here, and yeah, it's great that we all have access to that and are able to look at all that stuff and, on a whim. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was saying, so in the guilters in the Miranda Rights case, I did talk to a couple of other people that really, it's kind of scary that some of these people that were harassing them, and I think about what I do. All I do is talk about like this nerdy science stuff, but I did have a couple of people that did get quite emotional about it, and one or once in a while I do, but some of these people were really like, they started contacting their family and their places of work. And that is, it's like I've gotten, at first I did get upset, I will admit. But when that one guy took my picture and was posting it all around Twitter with evil woman who supports rapist murderer,
Right.
I was a little upset. Although a friend of mine said, well, at least it's a good picture, Ellen.
There you go. There you go.
I was anyway, but so I've gotten a little more mellow about that, but
yeah, some people just gotta hate, Scoobs. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like I got somebody out there right now in the world's thereabouts telling people that I took supporter money to take a trip to Australia. Absolutely freaking ridiculous statement, but it's being said out there. Somebody's actually out there saying that ridiculous crap. So what are you gonna do? You just move on.
But I just, the only thing that scared me was like I didn't want people, and I don't worry so much anymore, because I think people are much more, unless it would be some fringe radical lunatic, the state would never condone any harassing or I don't know, silencing type of behavior, because it's too out in the open now. It's too, the world is watching. And so
certainly.
but I just didn't want my family, or my work to be affected, those kind of things, is what
being in Wisconsin, I can understand,
what I'm more protective of than, but now, but that's getting that's getting better, and I'm getting bolder. So
there you go.
So Scooby, but Scooby allows me to be, because he's can be very much sassier than I can.
I do love the Scooby speak on Twitter.
I love it.
Oh my God.
Well, it's a sort of an interesting psychological because when I started, because I was always, I'm kind of nice, but when I started being Scooby, like I sort of become his persona. I know it's a little freaky, but it actually kind of is him, his personality. But I actually can feel more free to say certain things as him than I do as me.
Right.
So kind of
I like it when you start, you'll make a tweet. Yeah, the lady's being lazy. I'm gonna have to get on her about whatever it is. Oh my God, it cracks me up.
I've got that split personality thing, but
yeah, it's all right. It's funny though.
Yeah, I have fun with it. Yeah, it's sort of evolved into this thing, and then every once in a while, though, I get like that guy the other day. Every once in a while, I get someone who's irritated by that. Well, there was a guy not too recently. You are what I don't know what he said. Something stupid.
Oh yeah. Well, you're like I said, you're gonna always get that.
Funny talking like that.
Yeah, right. I'd just say screw them, because then they don't like your flavor. And like I said, they don't like your flavor. Move on to somebody's flavor you do like. Then.
Can't please them all.
Yeah, that's it.
So.
All right. So, anybody have some questions for Scooby, Allie, Tracy?
I'm around. Tracy's our guest today.
Obviously, Tracy. Most of all.
I'm just happy to.
And she's just like, oh no way, no. Don't ask me any questions.
I'm happy to.
You can also ask me questions too.
I'll plug the Vegemite. I'm gonna say B vitamins. It's supposed to be good for you, and it's
What do the
Tracy-
mitochondria do with B vitamins, Scoob?
Tracy sent this to me, and this little dare goes a long way because you just use a little bit, but I love it. I really do.
Yeah.
Eric, you still have yours, Eric? You got
My
it.
Vegemite? It's right here.
Yeah.
Because it's a souvenir from Australia. I keep it nearby when I record just so I can show it every once in a while. So I bought that duty free at the Sydney airport. And then when I got to customs and I was telling the lady that this was all I had really in terms of food, she told me that I should have tried the licorice while I was in Australia.
Oh, really?
No.
Apparently, she said it's really good there. Is that not true?
Licorice, I think, is an abomination from any country.
So you're the wrong one to ask.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Oh, you should have tried the licorice." I was like, "I had no idea that there was supposed to be good licorice there. Too bad."
Of all things that she could have said to you, she brings up licorice.
She said she hates the licorice here in the States, but she likes the licorice you guys have over there in Australia.
Did you get a big a meat pie in when you were here?
A big one? No, I ate a couple small ones.
You know, like at the footy. Did you get one at the footy?
Oh, they got them, but I was like still full from breakfast and all kind of messed up that day, and I couldn't eat it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to. But I had some meat pies on the fly down to Melbourne on the flight.
Yeah.
It was, and they were good. I liked them. They were good.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll come to it with Vegemite. Vegemite transforms bread. It's like it becomes something else. You know, and you only need a smattering of Vegemite with your butter.
Oh, I know. I was scraping it on lightly, and I was having it with my chorizo and egg that morning, and so I was like scraping it on lightly, and I still didn't finish the toast. I was just like, I don't know.
No, that's just a wrong combination right there. But I've seen you talk about chorizo and smoked sausage, right? In Australia, like we actually do have pepperoni because my son gets a pepperoni pizza at least once a week, right? So there is real pepperoni.
I figured there must be.
I'm putting this on Mark. I'm putting this on Mark, and where Mark has taken you to eat your food.
In his defense, it was just some little pizza place that we saw on the way back from Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
So it was like
that
wasn't exactly planned or anything.
It was freaking me out. I was like, "We have pepperoni. I will not believe it." That.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I got this pepperoni pizza, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, when did pepperoni look gray? I mean, it looked gray.
That's just wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, what's going on here?
And we also, Australia's a melting pot, and we have a huge Italian community in every big city. Right. So, Italian food across the board is usually pretty awesome. So yeah, I was disappointed for your smoked sausage episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. And I was, that breakfast that morning, I mean, it's almost good that chorizo wasn't all that great. And I gave it to Paul. Because, dude, I was hurting for the rest of the day after eating that breakfast. It was delicious. I stuffed myself until I was over full because of the eggs and the toast and the avocado. It was all great. It's probably better that chorizo wasn't as good as I hoped because I was so hurting for the rest of the day. I'd overeaten and I was just like, oh man, I hate it when I do that. All right, so let's see. Did any questions come up other than Capaldi going off about? Oh, geez, Paul, dude, bump the record player, dude, bump it. Come on, you're stuck. You're in a rut. He's just going on about Drizzen and Knight Rider and not recognizing Zellner and
no, Paul, but why would they? That's the question I put back to you in the conversation about Brendan Dassey to Brendan Dassey supporters. Do you not think there would be an ethical issue for them to veer into Stephen Avery's case or to talk about Kathleen. I put that to you, Paul. Why would that not be an ethical issue?
Does anyone think that they were pissed off by her criticism of MAM? Okay, so he's asking specifically at this point, does he think that they were upset by the comments she made in Making a Murderer season 2?
I think they're far too professional to have even considered it, to be honest. That's just my opinion.
Think so.
Yeah.
Let's see here. How could it? So Russell Gatan asks Paul Capaldi, how couldn't it be? She makes money per exonerees, and they work for a system aiding those that can't help those themselves. I think that got away from you, Russell. Let's see. Any other questions here? No, but a lot of people are saying bye and good night, so I think that's a pretty good sign that we should maybe sign off now. So, obviously, it's been lovely having you on, Tracy Keogh, for the first time.
Thank you very much.
Here a few times, but we still love her. And Scooby obviously has been here a few times. We still love you. But this was Tracy's show, and I wanted to let everybody know who Tracy Keogh is today. That was a big part of it. You've all been hearing me mention her here on my channel, but it's just taken me a long time to get her on. I had to actually go all the way to Australia first. I was able to get her on. So I
had to vet you first, Rich. I had to vet you first.
That's it, right?
Yeah, I'm honored to meet you, and it's we've been gotten to know each other, and but I have been touched by and in awe of all you do.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And like I said, folks, follow her on Twitter when you want to know what's going on in the political machinations there in Wisconsin. She's plugged in. Whenever there's something big going on, she's researching it, and she'll have articles and things posted for you on Twitter.
Tracy, and this again too is just amazes me. Tracy is up on what's going on in Wisconsin with, the politics and the laws and things, related to the case, and much more than most people in Wisconsin are, which
right.
It's just because I care.
Right. And yes, Fen, Tracy will be at Raleigh. You get to meet Tracy Keogh at Raleigh in person, in the flesh.
I will indeed.
And in the flesh. Anyway.
As far as getting people involved in Wisconsin, I don't know. I think we just keep what we're doing. And someone told me, or maybe it was you, Tracy, when we were talking last year, that I don't know, if you get one more person a month, or you just keep, it's not, you can't, make dramatic change overnight. It's
right. Yeah.
Sometimes
it's a crawl.
It makes me think of what's it, Liar, the crawl? The crawl. Yeah.
The claw.
Sorry. I love that film.
The people who I think I know we're trying to remember, the people that who do start to care when they understand, and this is where Tracy maybe you have. I thought we never wrap it up when we say we're going to. We're like the people that say goodbye and we talk another half hour.
I have a mind to, but we'll let it peter out on its own.
But he has the power to just shut. All of a sudden, I go. I go blue, blank, and then I know that's a hint.
You think so little of me.
Brendan, how can I say? Brendan is not. What's the polite word we use, or the euphemism? Brendan has some obviously cognitive issues.
Mental limitations.
But it, that doesn't matter. However, there are a lot of people I know, because I have nieces and nephews who have have a severe they actually have a mitochondrial disorder, and it
Right.
causes to come full circle, which causes those things. But it's the people that have, even if their children are more affected than Brendan, or maybe do have a diagnosis that he doesn't have. But when you look at, but they see their child in Brendan, or their family member, or their loved one who maybe has, or even some kind of mental illness, what. Who I was not aware before, Brendan, who protects those people? All of
Right.
these people deserve, even an adult who has, some type of cognitive problems, or children. I've met people, that's a bridge that gets people to Brendan, because you think, and
Yes.
that's just what's so tragic about him, because he's such a
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yes.
He's not only a child, but he,
Yeah.
He wasn't in a position, he didn't have the faculties to be able to hold his own in that
Right.
situation. He never did.
Oh,
And for the fact that that wasn't recognized is abominable to me.
right.
You know,
Tracy, I'm not saying that in an insulting way, but the reality is, like when I look at, if I looked at, like one of my, nephews being in a situation like that, it would break my heart, because it's just, some of these people with like that, like Brendan, or not, I don't want to say like Brendan, but with some of these types of disabilities, are just the sweetest, kindest, gentlest souls.
mm-hmm.
And when you think about them being just used and bullied, and I'm sorry what those men did to Brendan. Desi was just so wrong. I could not even watch all of those tapes, Tracy. I could only watch part of them. I just couldn't.
It is hard to do.
And the guilters would tell me, you didn't watch them all. You didn't even get to them. I'm like, the bullocks. I don't need to watch anymore. I don't need to. And I have not met one, and even aside from the emotional view, I have not met one professional. I mean, as far as like neuropsych person, neurologist, anyone who does not agree that was totally wrong.
No.
Right.
I mean, you've got professionals like Dr. Sol Kassan, Dr. Richard Leo. You have people who, they're across this in so many ways, and have been for so many years. And all of the stamps of support for Brendan, from, as we discussed before, all the eminent, parties to the Supreme Court amicus, and even the Seventh Circuit amicus. These people know what they're talking about.
Right.
And for others to just dismiss their expertise, taking that expertise and looking at what Brendan endured, and coming away with that with 4-3 on bulk majority, to me is just unfathomable. I will never understand that. And I think the whole idea of it's one of the reasons I'm here, is because it was a young child who was bullied, who was unable to defend themselves or to understand the implications of what was happening to him. And I don't have somebody with, I'm fortunate in that my children are not, they don't have disabilities and what have you in that aspect. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The fact that what happened to Brendan was enough to compel me.
It is compelling.
Right. And that our system, there needs to be something that people who are vulnerable, whatever their vulnerability is, whether they're a child, whether they're an adult with you would just assume, I guess, I mean, I was so unaware of how bad, things could be in a legal system.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're going to wrap it up. We're going to go out with a little bit of Stacy here.
Good.
A little bit of Truth Train.
Nice.
So,
Tracy.
It's great seeing all you guys. Great having you all
lovely.
on. It's very,
thank you so much.
very pleasant and
Very
very
nice to meet
informative, I
you.
believe, as well.
Likewise.
Yes.
Thank you for being here, Allie and Scooby.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
For Yes, go Vegemite, someone said. Yes. B vitamins. In fact, I'm thinking I need to do more Vegemite. You know, I was thinking I had to resort to crack to keep going. No, I think I've been. I need more Vegemite.
You just needed more vitamin B. Yeah, there you go.
I'll bring it, Scooby. I'll bring it. I can't have you going near crack. I'll bring the Vegemite.
Thank you.
All right.
Good
Thank you
night.
for being
you
here,
so
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get
Pleasure.
on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery, a complete fabrication. Get on the train
Oh, I've got the
before it leaves town. The truth train coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Tambourine.
Yes.
Yes.
And we all know Stephen and Brendan were blamed, but it does not take a brain surgeon to see that they were framed. Yes, we know what this was about. The civil suit settlement they did not want to pay out,
And the depositions.
This is what we
And
can.
you may hear this song, or maybe you don't get it. I suggest you look up TikTok, Minutes to Walk on Reddit. You will find trial transcripts, evidence files, and reports, and you start to fathom the corruption within the courts. Now, as you shake your head because everything seems demented, you will find yourself in company of 3 unbanked judges that dissented. But don't you worry, you're not going insane. You just happen to sit down on Selner's Truth Train. Get on the train. I said before it leaves the station, final destination, inevitable exoneration. Get on the train. Oh, before it leaves town, the truth train coming, gonna run them down, run them down. Get on the train.
Hey, Scoobs, people are asking if you're going to come back to Discord. They'd love to continue talking to you, I guess, tonight.
Oh, we're still gonna talk more?
Well, I guess, Russell Gatan is wishing you were back over there on Discord. I guess he wants to chat with you.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, consider coming back over to Discord because he's not the first one I've seen ask.
I hope on introducing Scoops as a tambourine player. Well, we can only ask him. Okay, maybe then that'll. Okay. Well, I love talking to all you guys. So talking can get me places. Okay.
All right. Yeah, hit her up, guys. Get her, work on her. Get her back in there.
Thanks for being here.
If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, guys. Look forward to MAM-a-thon coming up this weekend. Following, not one right now, not today, but next weekend. So look for that. And everybody, hope to see you for MAM-a-thon. We'll see you later.
Happy Easter.